Good morning, everybody, and welcome to OLC4O Term 1B. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty, and today is January 24th, 2023. So we're up to class 34 of a 36 class session. So we've got 3 more to go, including today. And that's why we're dedicating the last 4 classes to getting everybody ready for the final exam. So this is part 2. It's going to be a 4-part session where we review some key concepts from OLC4O and we look at some practice exams that are available online. These are literacy tests that have been written by students in previous years, and now they're online for you to see. So what you're looking at is an actual exam, an actual literacy test, and the test that you're going to get will of course feature different content, different articles, different questions, but the whole point of OLC4O is to give you some universal literacy skills, so some universal reading and writing skills that you can apply to any situation, right? So some courses you take, the content is very specific, but with our course, it's not so much about the content. It's how you read it, and and then with this course, you're generating a lot of the content yourself. You're producing writing, and so OLC4O at its core is giving you strategies for reading and writing, giving you some tools that you can use. So if you understand those tools and you know how to use them, you can apply them to any piece of writing somebody might throw at you. You'll know how to read it, write it, decipher it, pick it apart. That's what we're doing here, trying to give you the tools to do that. So we are in week 9 of classes. Our final broadcast and class will be Thursday, January 26th, though a few days from now, that'll be the final class in Term 1B. So, please be aware that Term 2A is starting February 6th, 2023, right? So the next term in WASA's school year is starting up pretty soon. And the deadline for applying for that will be next week. So if you want to register for courses that are going to be broadcast in Term 2A, then you should take care of that now, with the deadline being next week. I believe next Friday. So maybe tomorrow I'll get a firm deadline. But in any case, if you want to sign up, you should be doing that today and by the very latest next week. So we've got units 1, 2, 3, and 4 all taken care of, and we're looking at the final exam and culminating activity for the final week of this term, of Term 1B. So as I've mentioned, if you're an independent learner, then you don't have a scheduled class to attend, and you can maybe look at some archived classes if you want some help. But if you're registered as a term, every course offered by WASA will have a specific broadcast schedule. This course, even though it's coming to an end, we were meeting from 10 to 10:55 a.m. Central Standard Time. But just for example, I'll be teaching 2 courses next term, ENG3E and ENG4E, which are workplace English, and those will be offered at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. So every course you take has a specific broadcast time, and that's if you're, and this is ideal. Hopefully you can attend live and you can answer questions, and that's probably the best experience we can get for both teacher and student if we can participate live and have a conversation with each other. But of course, if that can't happen, then you can continue to watch the videos on YouTube. I mentioned yesterday that I started a new playlist yesterday, and that playlist is named Final Exam. So if you're watching this video in the future, May or April 2023, just know that every unit and the final exam is all covered, and you can watch these at any time. So check that out. Most WASA teachers have a YouTube channel, and you can go back, and hopefully you can find broadcasts from the current school year, and you might find some from the previous school year. So that's always an option for you if you can't attend courses live. If you can't listen to the live broadcast, then they are available for you that way. And if you're an independent learner, you need to create a schedule for getting your work handed in. So I've mentioned this many times, but it's always worth mentioning again. I think it's best to reach out to your teacher, and I think a lot of students, I'm just guessing, but maybe feel like they're falling behind, and then when they finally do start writing the chorus, I sometimes get like an entire unit or half of a unit, and I would strongly suggest that you just hand in a lesson or two, like lesson 1 and lesson 2, just one assignment, especially in OLC4O. The first assignment you do is a writing assignment, and if I could see that assignment right away, I guarantee you I'll be able to provide you with some feedback to try to improve your writing and just to improve how you're approaching the chorus. So, and you've really got to take a long game when it comes to improving your reading and writing skills. I think this applies to a lot of areas of life. Like, if you want to get yourself in better physical shape, you should be looking at it in terms of like months from now, years from now. I know it's hard to have that long-term approach, but you really have to have patience and just know that these skills, they take a long time to accumulate. It's like anything. It's like learning a new skill, learning how to play an instrument, learning how to be an artist, learning how to sketch, to paint, to illustrate, learning how to carve wood, to build a house. It takes years to really, really get good at something, and you have to have feedback. And that is my biggest role in this chorus. Like, I enjoy showing students the unit material and showing you the finer points of the English language and delving into the origins of words. I love all of that, but I think that probably the most meaningful impact I could have on a student is reading their work and then giving them some feedback. And it's not all negative, right? It's not like I just give you a bunch of mistakes to work on. I like to highlight your strengths and look at your limitations and give you some ways to keep on getting better. And that's how you communicate with myself, your teacher. So email, Facebook Messenger, phone. We got 2 numbers. That's the WASA office in Sioux Lookout. That's the Sioux Lookout area. And this one is the free long-distance number. Contact me 9 to 3 Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday. That's when I'm available at my desk. Here's your suggested progress. This is about, 8 to 9 weeks in. I'm going to change my pen. There we go. So you should have read all of units 1 through 4. That part should be done. At the very least, you should have... whoops, I think I made my pen even thicker. There we go. So you should have at least scanned or skimmed Unit 4 and read Units 1 to 3 completely. Assignments 1 through 41 should be completed around this time if you're working as part of a term. And then you should make a plan for completing assignments 42, 43, and compiling your literacy portfolio. All right, so here is today's lesson. We'll look at a headline, and we're just for time's sake, I'm not doing the word or images of the day, even though I love doing those. We need to focus on exam preparation. So we're going to be reviewing practice final exams found on this website. So if you have access to a website, if you have internet access, you can go to OntarioLiteracy.ca, and then if you don't have access to that, then I could possibly look at creating some PDF files, giving you some practice exams. So if you don't have internet access in your community, or if it's spotty or whatever the reason may be, then we can always look at printing off some. We can always print off the practice exams and the booklets and the questions and get those up to you too. Those are great too. You can always complete one of those practice exams, and just to familiarize yourself with the expectations, because what you see on that website is going to be very close to what you get when you write your final exam. So our learning goals for today are to learn about strategies and mindsets to use when taking an exam. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to say before answering, and going to focus on those two today, right? So, and then during the exam, right? So some strategies you can take before you answer questions, and some strategies you can put in place during the exam itself. And then we'll review some of the key concepts of OLC4O while taking an online practice exam. So we'll do that again today. We'll keep on working through yesterday's practice exam, and then we'll go on to a next one if we have time. But these do take a while. So you'll have been successful if you can use the strategies and mindsets presented today before taking a practice exam. So I'm hoping you can take some of the tips and strategies that I'll walk you through today, and you can put those into effect. You can put those into practice by taking a practice exam. And then I'm hoping you can put the key concepts of OLC4O into action while completing at least one practice exam. So start practicing some of those reading strategies, skimming, scanning, making predictions, making inferences. If you don't understand a word in the final exam, using some, put it in context, that kind of thing. Using the writing process, that's some of the key concepts. So we have some key reading strategies, some key writing strategies. All right, so with that in mind, we're once again looking at an article published by the Globe and Mail. I think it's always important to look at what the professionals are doing. And so we learn about current events, but we're also looking at professional writers and seeing how they have crafted their words and how they've put together their sentences and paragraphs. So, a very large component, one of the most important aspects of OLC4O is understanding how a text works. Looking at it, taking it apart, understanding its various pieces, looking about how it's organized, thinking about who wrote it, why they wrote it, what purpose did they have in mind. So this one is an opinion piece, okay? So we've talked a lot about different narratives in this course. Information texts, stories, nonfiction, fiction, and we've looked at a lot of opinion pieces. So here's one opinion piece. And so the opinion piece is written by a man named Dan Malik. It was published 3 days ago in the Globe and Mail. And it's got to do with the new alcohol guidelines that have been released by Canada. So the headline reads, "Canada's drastic new alcohol guidelines demand a closer look." So there's our headline. Always good to break down these pieces. This is our photo. That's our byline. The byline is who wrote it and when they wrote it. That's our photo caption. Alcohol's association with cancer is important to examine, but understanding risk of the disease also needs context. And over here, we've got the photo credit. So Jeff McIntosh took this photograph. And that is from the Canadian Press. So there's our headline. Break down the parts of speech. So Canada's, we got the apostrophe S. So we know that something belongs to Canada. And let's see what belongs to Canada. Drastic new alcohol guidelines. So, you know, I've often said in this course, you know, good writing is specific. You know, details, right? And descriptions. So we have 3 descriptors here for the guidelines. The guidelines talk about alcohol. So but we're not just talking about any alcohol guidelines. We're talking about the new alcohol guidelines that were introduced by Canada. And the author has used this word right here, drastic, okay? So that's definitely their opinion, right? So the people who released these guidelines, the government probably wouldn't describe them as being drastic, but the author has labeled them as drastic. But they're all adjectives, right? And they all modify this noun. So these guidelines demand, that's the verb. A, that's our article. A, and the are the 3 articles in the English language. A closer look. Okay, that should also be in orange, right? But so they demand a closer look. And that's the author's opinion about the new guidelines. And as we'll see, it's not just that they demand a closer look. It's that the author is kind of critical. So 2 drinks a week. That guidance for low-risk drinking has dominated the headlines around the latest advice Canadians have received about how much alcohol they should consume. So I want to draw your attention to something, right? So again, this is why teaching English is so much fun, and it also makes it kind of challenging sometimes too, right? Look at that opening sentence. 2 drinks a week. So technically, that is a sentence fragment because there's no verb, there's no subject, but it does serve as the hook. It does grab your attention. It's short. It's powerful. So that's a strategy that you might want to use in your writing. Sometimes it's nice to open with a really punchy short sentence that just grabs the reader's attention. So that's a strategy you might want to employ. And when you read somebody else's writing, you might want to keep a notebook or just write down those examples. And so that's what we're talking about here. The new guidelines that came out said that no Canadian should consume more than 2 drinks a week, and anything beyond that is dangerous. And so that's what this article is about. It's taking that. It's looking at that guideline and examining it. The new Health Canada funded guidelines, which were released by the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, the CCSA, this week, recommend revising safe drinking limits, arguing that beyond 1 to 2 drinks a week, you are increasingly at risk of a range of conditions, including heart disease, stroke, and cancer. So we've got commas used to separate items in a list, And we've got the writing technique that we've seen over and over again with these news reports is additional information is blocked off with commas, right? So the guidelines, and then we get more information about the guidelines, who they were released by, right? So recommend revising safe drinking limits, arguing that beyond 1 or 2 drinks a week, you are increasingly at risk of a range of conditions. But before you throw out your wine collection, let's try some perspective. Again, so the author is using, a very short 1-sentence paragraph, right? And so it functions as a transition. So again, we're looking at professional writers, and they can achieve a lot with one sentence, one paragraph. So it sort of gets your attention, and then it also transitions to the next part of the essay. And yesterday we talked about the very important technique of compare and contrast. So, so while this is happening, let's also think about this. So the author is saying these new guidelines are out, and the guidelines are saying you shouldn't have more than 2 drinks a week. But hold on a minute. Before you throw out all of your wine or whatever, let's try some perspective. Let's look at this a different way. So first, a caveat. I am not an anti-public health zealot. I am a scholar who studies alcohol in its social and cultural environment. But I am also wary of generalized recommendations of behavior change based upon narrowly selected evidence from a cohort that sounds increasingly like the 19th century temperance movement. Okay, so lots of good words here. That's zealot. That's a word from the Bible. The zealots were people who were, kind of aggressively pushed like a certain lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle in their point of view. So a caveat, which is basically just a warning. So he's telling the reader who he is. And finally, although reports have suggested that the guidelines are based on nearly 6,000 peer-reviewed studies, so that's a really important concept. So a peer-reviewed study is a study that's looked at by many experts. It's looked at and it's approved, right? And that's how science works, or that's how science should work ideally. You can't just do one study, put it out there, and have people believe it's the truth. It has to be looked at by other people. They're called peers because your peers are your equals, right? They're other scientists. So if you're doing a study on alcohol use, then your peers are going to be scientists in that field. They're going to look at your research and they're going to say, okay, this makes sense. They're doing the correct methodology, which just means the correct process. So they had 6,000 studies, but they ruled out all but 16 studies out from being used in the mathematical modeling. In other words, there's that transition phrase. In other words, comma, the CCSA is basing its recommendations on a relatively narrow understanding of how alcohol functions. So we don't have time to go into the whole article, but it's an opinion piece, and the author rolls out their opinion, and then they roll out a whole bunch of facts to back up why they think they are right. And so that's what you have to do when you write an opinion piece, and that's what you have to do if you're reading an opinion piece. You have to, you have to identify the main idea or the argument, and then you have to identify the evidence, right? And just thinking back to yesterday and previous classes, there is directly stated information. So an author will write things down in their essay that you can read. And so if it's directly stated, the author says it, and there's no question about it. The author believes this because they said it. And then there's indirectly stated information. And so sometimes, especially with an opinion piece, the author is not going to say, my opinion on this issue is this. It's going to be in there, but you're going to have to do a little bit of work. But you have to identify the main idea and the argument, and then look at the evidence they use to back that up. And so if you're going to disagree with somebody, you have to understand what their main idea is, what their argument is, and then talk about, and then discuss what evidence they're using to back up that main argument. So I don't agree with your main argument, and I'm going to pick apart your evidence one by one, right? So sometimes if you're having an argument with someone, you may disagree with their main idea, but you might only disagree with one or two of their evidence, right? So maybe you're like, sure, I agree with that point, I agree with this point, but I think you're really off base on that point. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So, that is at the heart of a lot of the writing we've looked at, right? So, information articles do the same thing. They have a main idea. They back up that main idea with evidence, with examples, with descriptions. So with the final exam culminating activity, you will be expected to do some writing, and you will write a summary of a text. This is unclear, right? The text is 250 words. Your summary, might be shorter than that. It will be, of course, because you're writing a summary. So maybe like 100 to 150 words. Because that is what a summary is. A summary is a shortened version. It's just the highlights. A good example of this would be like a hockey game, which if you watch an NHL hockey game, it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour broadcast, and then they condense that down to like a 5-minute highlight reel. So just the summary of the game, what the final score was, what the biggest moments were, the best goals, the best hits, the best saves, right? It's just a summary, right? And like a movie trailer to a certain extent is kind of the same way. You've got like an hour and a half, 2-hour movie, and they've got that condensed down to like a 2-minute little segment, right? So it's not really a summary, but it is picking out some of the best pieces of that article. And you'll also record and organize the information they have gathered. Students will gather about a topic related to an assigned class activity and construct an information paragraph appropriate to a specific audience and purpose. So you'll get a text, you'll summarize it, and you'll also have to gather a bunch of information about a topic and then produce some writing about it for a specific audience and purpose. So that audience and purpose will be listed in the question. So you're writing this particular kind of article for this specific audience for this specific purpose. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this website, the OntarioLiteracy.ca website, and we're going to pull up some more of those practice exams. Because I think that's really what we need to do to get ready for this final exam or culminating activity. It's going to be similar no matter which one you do. So we can type in Ontario Literacy. down here, and on my monitor, or on my PC anyways, the first one that comes up is, well, there's Community Literacy of Ontario. We don't want that. What we want is the Ontario Literacy, OSSLT, practice tests and more. Or we can just type in that URL, the Universal Resource Locator, and just type in OntarioLiteracy.ca. And there we are. We have pulled up the website. We're on the page here. So yesterday I showed you that you can click down here on the extensive library of practice tests. So you can click on those tests, or you can click up here. Either one is fine. It'll bring you to the same web page. And we're going to keep working on the 2018-2019. So when you click on that, on this left-hand menu, you've got them going back all the way back to 2003, 2004, which is around the time that the literacy course started, or the literacy test started. I graduated high school in 1999, and we didn't have a literacy course or a literacy test. It was, I believe it was 2000 or 2001 when they implemented that, when they started that requirement to graduate. And so I never had to write one, but of course had to teach the course and become quite familiar with the test. So we have all of these tests going back from 2004. Some years are missing, but you have over 10 practice tests you could do. Once you click on it, you'll see that it brings up some fields where you can answer some questions, and then it brings up so these are the questions that you have to answer in order to write the test. And then there's also a booklet. So people who write the literacy test, they're provided with a booklet. And you see that little warning there, no work in this booklet will be scored. So you have the booklet with the reading selections, and then you have the answer booklet where you put in the question. So for your final exam, it's all going to be included in one document, and then you'll simply write your responses down on a piece of paper. So you'll have the questions, you'll write them down, or depending on the setup in your community, in your learning center, you might write them onto a PC, onto a computer. I'm not sure what's going to be acceptable. It's going to be different depending on who's watching you do the exam. So it is a closed book exam in that sense, where you don't have your notes in front of you. But again, this class, it's not really about like knowing certain dates and times, and you are expected to understand certain definitions and terms, but it's really about understanding those universal ideas of reading and writing. So with that in mind, let's jump into it and pick up where we left off yesterday. So the first task is a writing piece where you are expressing an opinion on the topic below. So I'm going to come back to that one, and I want to finish off what we did. Maybe let's look at these multiple choice questions. Zoom in so I get that as big as I can on the screen here, right? So we talked about this one yesterday. Which sentence does not belong in the following paragraph? And so I mentioned yesterday, look at the question, and it does say it does not belong, but I think what they're really saying is, which one of these could you cut? If you had to cut one of these sentences, which one of them could you cut? And one of the sentence talks about black flies, right? And so if you're talking about mosquitoes, it's useful to know about black flies, but it's not essential. So, which one could be cut? I think it's the sentence 5. Choose the correct pronouns to complete the following sentence. When the little boy grabbed the toy train, blank wheel broke off in blank hand. Okay? So to understand that question, you need to know how it works. So it equals something belongs to it, and it apostrophe s is the same thing as saying it is. Okay? So when the little boy grabbed the toy train, so we have to figure out which one of these it's is right. So we know that by a process of elimination that that one's going to be wrong, that one's going to be wrong. So it's going to be now we got it down to A or C. And that's a really useful strategy when you're looking at multiple choice questions. You want to eliminate the ones that you know for sure are definitely wrong. So we know that B and D are wrong, so it's got to be down to A and C. So when the little boy grabbed the toy train, its wheel broke off in, is it going to be his or he's hand, right? And if you say the question out loud, you should get the right answer. When the little boy grabbed the toy train, its wheel broke off in his hand, right? So we know that A is the correct answer because he's is not proper English, right? It's not going to be the right answer. Okay, so there we go. So process of elimination, start jotting down your ideas, and it'll help you out a lot. Choose the sentence that is written correctly. Remember yesterday I talked about, take your time, read the question. What you have to do is you have to choose the sentence that is written correctly. So if I know that one sentence is written correctly, I have to cross off 3 that are not written correctly. So we got to review some key concepts. So there, is it something that belongs to they, right? And they apostrophe RE equals they are. And there is a preposition. It's a location, like over there. All right? So there must be billions of stars in the universe. So that there is incorrect. It should have been THERE, right? All the children have their permission forms. So take it apart. So all the children have they are permission forms. No, that's incorrect. So A and B are wrong. They are never going to make it back to the train station in time, okay? That looks correct to me, but let's look at letter D. Micheline and Jacob were unsure when they're going to get the exam results. So that should be this there, when they are going to get the results. So by a process of elimination, I can see that C is the correct answer. Okay, let's look at D. Choose the option. Choose the option that best combines all the information in the following sentences. So we've got, let's just erase that. And then we can scroll down without this text following us. All right. So choose the option that best combines all the information in the following sentences. Nina is in grade 12. Nina is on the student council. Nina is taking extra courses this term. So Nina, comma, a grade 10 student, is on the student council and is taking extra courses this term. So we know that she's in grade 10. She's on the student council, taking extra terms. Okay, that one looks fine for now, but let's... Nina, who is in grade 10, is a student taking extra courses and also on the student council. So we know she's in grade 10, student council, and extra courses. Nina is a grade 10 student, and she is on the student council, and she is taking extra courses this term. So, okay. Nina is a grade 10 student who is taking extra courses this term and who is on the student council. Okay, you see that repetition of who is and who is? I would say it's not problematic. So every sentence has the three pieces, right? They have all of these pieces in them, but which one combines them in the best way? Nina, who is in grade 10, is a student taking extra courses and is also on the student council. Nina's a grade 10 student, and she is on the council, and she is taking... So, and she is... See that repetition there? You want to avoid that, right? So I would stick with my gut instinct, and I would go with letter A. Nina, comma, a grade 10 student, is on the student council and is taking extra courses this term. What I would suggest too is to just read the sentence out loud. This is a very important strategy. Or, read it in your head. And, trust your instincts. So I would say, which one reads the best, and which one is least repetitive. So I would look at those two requirements, and I would ask yourself those questions. So which one of these reads the best, and which one of them is the least repetitive? And that's probably going to be your best answer. So if they're asking you to talk about, of these four sentences, which one is written the best, that's what I would do. All right. So yesterday we were looking at testing our reading skills, and we had to read this article. So now let's actually read the article together and then move on from there. So Jessie McAlpine knew she wanted to be a scientist as early as grade 2 when she signed one of her homework assignments, Dr. Jessie McAlpine. She was only a grade 9 student when she published her first research paper, The Effects of CO2 and Chronic Cold Exposure on Fecundity of Female Drosophila melanogaster. Grade 9. That's pretty amazing for a grade 9 student. By the time she graduated from high school, McAlpine had already won a top prize at an international science fair and had begun, it's going to zoom in a bit, and had begun collaborative research with the University of Toronto scientists. She had also made 2 interesting discoveries in her basement lab, both of which she is now in the process of patenting. So a patent is when you have the rights to an idea or a process or an invention. One of her patents is for a bioherbicide, a biologically based substance for weed control, which McAlpine developed using molecular compounds found in garlic, mustard plants, and coffee grounds. The other is a mustard oil compound, allyl isothiocyanate, the ingredient that gives mustard and wasabi, similar to horseradish, its pungent kick. She hopes to develop this into a treatment for malaria. This parasitic disease infects about 219 million people every year and is growing resistant to available drugs. McAlpine's anti-malaria compound idea came to her in grade 11 after she read a newspaper article about a potential treatment using herbicides. In the 1990s, scientists discovered that the parasite causing malaria, a species called Plasmodium, actually has plant genes because it evolved hundreds of millions of years ago from an ancient algae. These genes are essential to the parasite's survival. So the thinking was this: if herbicides killed plant genes, maybe they could kill malaria parasites too. Since I'd spent the past 2 years developing a herbicide, I thought, oh, Maybe I can change my compound into a malaria drug, recalls McAlpine. Other scientists worldwide were already working on new treatments that could target these plant genes. Some treatments have reached clinical trials, but as far as McAlpine knows, no one has experimented with mustard oil. Now, in 2013, in her first year of University of Toronto, McAlpine hopes her drug will be cheap, effective, and accessible to people in the developing world. Globally, we're always in desperate need of other anti-malarial products, said Ian Crandall, a U of T professor who has been working with McAlpine at the Sandra A. Rotman Laboratories, where he is a principal investigator. The interesting thing about what Jesse has been doing is that growing mustard oil is not something that requires a huge facility to do. If it's kind of a natural product that can be used to treat malaria, then it's something that's worth looking into. While McAlpine's early experiments have shown promise, her research is still in the very early stages. David Roos, a University of Pennsylvania biology professor whose lab helped confirm Plasmodium's plant ancestry, applauds her efforts, but cautions that, quote, the world is full of thousands and thousands of natural products that have been shown to be effective against malaria parasites, but have not wound up as drugs. For McAlpine's success, if it ever comes, is at least 10 years and millions of dollars away. It's also important to remain realistic, she notes. There's still a lot of tests that need to be done and a lot of work that needs to be completed for that dream to be realized. But luckily for McAlpine, at 18, there is plenty of time. All right, so there's the article, and if we go into the questions, so yesterday we read the questions, and then today we've actually gone in and read the article, and so now we should be able to answer these questions. So when did McAlpine publish her first research paper? In grade 9, in grade 10, in her first year of university, and her last year of high school. So I'm pretty sure it was grade 9. And if you go back and do that skimming, right, and you look for grades, okay, we got grade 11. That's when she came to this idea. We're looking for grade, okay, grade 9. Okay, so grade 9 first paper. Boom, got it. So, right, so use that scanning technique. Look for the word grade. It's almost like doing a word search, right? It's easy to find one word if you just focus on that one word. How is the information in paragraph 1 organized? Is it general to specific? Is it chronological? So is it first then last? Is it a compare and contrast? Is it a problem and a solution? So let's see what they're doing in the first paragraph. So the first paragraph starts off when she's in grade 2, talks about her being in grade 9, and then talks about her graduating high school, and then talks about her collaborating with University of Toronto scientists. So again, using that process of elimination, it's not talking about a problem and solution. It's not comparing and contrasting. It's not really talking about general to specific, but I would argue that it's definitely talking about chronological order. So it talks about this very young scientist, as young as grade 2, which is amazing, and then all the way down to her being an 18-year-old scientist, right? So it's chronological. Why is there a need for a new malarial product? Is it because malaria treatments are expensive? Organic treatments are more effective. Scientists have not been interested in updating treatments, and malaria is growing resistant to treatments that are currently available, right? So that was, and so again, if you don't remember the right answer, look at the question and what is the key term in this question, right? I would argue the key term is anti-malarial. So use that scanning and skimming technique. In this case, we're scanning for a particular word. Let's look for anti-malarial, right? So you're looking for that. There we go. We've got globally, we're always in desperate need of another anti-malarial product. But that doesn't really tell us why we need that product. Okay, let's... Okay. The parasitic disease infects 219 million people every year and is growing resistant to available drugs. Okay, so we didn't see the key term anti-malarial, so sometimes the technique doesn't work, but we did find this sentence. They're growing resistant to available drugs. So which one of those answers growing resistant to treatment. So that would be D. All right. Question 4. Which statement is one of McAlpine's hypotheses, right? So a hypothesis is a scientific word that literally means an educated guess or a prediction. More technically speaking, it's a prediction about what's going to happen. So hypotheses is the plural because she has more than one, but which statement is one of her hypotheses? So does she believe that mustard oil can alter plant genes? Does she believe that herbicides can kill malarial parasites? Does she believe that plasmodium can be used to treat malaria? Or does she believe that allyl isothiocyanate can be made less pungent? So what does she believe is true? So, and then you might want to look up those keywords: mustard oil, herbicide, plasmodium, to find the idea. And if it's one of her hypotheses, it might be in quotation marks. Okay, so that's another strategy you might wanna look at. Since I'd spent the past 2 years developing a herbicide, I thought maybe I can change my compound into a malaria drug. Right? So maybe she could change her compound into a malarial drug. That's something that she did say. That's a prediction she made. So that is her compound, right? So that one takes a bit of thinking, right? So that one's going to be no one has experimented with mustard oil. Okay. We're always in desperate need of an anti-malarial product. All right, so what is her dream? Okay. Yeah, that one's tricky. That one's going to take a bit of work. So, which paragraph best describes how mustard oil might help treat malaria? So again, using that scanning and skimming technique, we have to look up for mustard oil. The other is a mustard oil campaign. So the ingredient gives. So she hopes to develop it into a treatment for malaria. Okay, so there it is. So I think I found the answer to the previous one too, right? So I think that paragraph 2, it describes how the mustard oil would be used to so she hopes to develop this into a treatment for malaria, right? So so I don't think it's that herbicides can kill malarial parasites. Mustard oil can alter plant genes. I think this is paragraph 2. Still not sure about number 4. I have to come back to that. But what does it mean that McAlpine's experiments have shown promise? Okay, so what does it mean that they've shown promise? So paragraph 5. Let's read that again. Her early experiments have shown promise. Her research is still very early stages, right? Applauds her efforts. So what does that mean that they've shown promise? Scientists question McAlpine's intentions, so I don't think that's accurate. So if something is showing promise, it's going to be a positive thing. McAlpine has almost completed her research. Again, that's not consistent with what we read before. Her investigations have the potential to be successful. The compound is so I would say C. It has the potential to become successful, right? So that's all the time we have for today. I think we'll come back and look at this a little bit more tomorrow and then keep on moving with some other practice exams. So thanks for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.